Thank you for the introduction, Jessica. That was great, and I don't think of my full title, which is always a mouthful. So yes, I'm from Caltrans, District 5, and I'm pleased to be here today to be able to present with Mark a brief overview of a project that we're working on with a number of partners here in San Benito County, the Rocks Road Wildlife Connectivity Project on US 101. Next slide, please. I always like to start with this slide because it gives a very brief overview of the ways that transportation can affect wildlife connectivity. So we know that wildlife moves between habitat blocks for a variety of reasons, for breeding, for seasonal migration, for food and water, and also for dispersal into new territories. Roads and highways that are built between these habitat blocks can sometimes block wildlife movement. And in turn, we sometimes see increased rates of wildlife vehicle collisions through these areas. Next slide, please. So this shows the location of the project at US 101 Rocks Ranch. The project study area runs from the Monterey-San Benito County line to just north of the Eucalyptus Grove on US 101. UC Davis has done studies across the state and found that this stretch of US 101 is a hotspot for wildlife vehicle collisions, and that includes large animals like deer and mountain lion. So this project aims to help connect the high-quality habitat on either side of US 101 in this area, while also decreasing the rates of wildlife vehicle collisions. Next slide, please. So, in addition to the UC Davis studies, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife has designated this area a priority area for wildlife movement where resources should be dedicated. On the slide on the right, or the image on the right, it's a little bit of an esoteric sort of picture, but what it shows is the red line is US 101, and that's the barrier there in the circle. And the dark blue shows high-quality habitat based on CDFW modeling. And so where 101 bisects this high-quality habitat is the project location. And to the north, the high-quality blue habitat is the Santa Cruz Mountains, and to the south, it's the Gabilan Range, which travels then to connect to areas like Pinnacles and down south to Los Padres. Next slide, please. So this is a more familiar view of the project location. We all know this one pretty well. This is where 101 travels through the Eucalyptus Grove. This is a high-volume traffic area, as we see goods and services as well as traveling public going from the Bay Area to the Monterey Bay Peninsula. In addition to these high traffic densities, this particular stretch of 101 also does not have any bridges or large culverts that wildlife can use to travel under the highway. And so I've been talking about the highway itself and the road infrastructure, but I'm going to turn it over to Mark now to talk a bit more about the surrounding areas.
Thanks, Morgan. Yeah, and I want to, you can go to the next slide. I wanted to take a little sort of step back to also highlight some of the context and also just kind of pointing out the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County involvement here in this process and how we come to work with Caltrans. So again, here's a broader view of this area that Morgan was just pointing out. And there's the Rocks Ranch, which, as some of you may know, the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County had the opportunity to play an important part in the protection of just a few years back, and has been part of our overall conservation planning in this broader region. So we are the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County, but you know, we recognize the wildlife don't recognize political boundaries, and I want to take this moment too to introduce this concept of a linkage. So you might hear this term bandied about this evening in ecology and wildlife ecology. The term linkage is just it's a term used to note an area of importance, connectivity between areas of core habitat. So as Morgan pointed out, you got the Santa Cruz Mountains up here, you have the Gabilan Range down here, and what we know from many studies throughout the years is this area that we're sitting in now, and that's highlighted right here in between the orange lines, is this important linkage or area of connectivity for wildlife movement. So this has been recognized as being very important to the overall conservation, and so the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County has acquired parcels in South Santa Cruz County, like the Star Creek Ranch right here, many parcels in the Pajaro Valley of agricultural importance that are also important in this landscape. And then again, Rocks Ranch. And as I'll point out, part of our work is highlighting studies that have shown, again, just the importance of this area for wildlife movement and why something like a wildlife crossing over a highway is so important. So next slide. This is just another visual of that, of how this area, again, this is where we're all sitting right now in the bottleneck between this area of important habitat in the Santa Cruz Mountains and then the Gabilan Range. And the Santa Cruz Mountains really are like an island for wildlife in that they're bounded on one side by the Pacific Ocean, a lot of development on the peninsula on the other side, and then some pretty intensive agricultural land use in the Pajaro Valley as well as in the upper Pajaro Valley and the southern Coyote Valley. And again, the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County has helped in or partaken in many studies that have highlighted the importance of this area. I'm going to talk in particular about one of them in a minute. And the other important piece then is, again, this bottleneck being bisected by, as Morgan pointed out, the Highway 101. So next slide. And this sort of is the crux of the issue, which we're going to hear a lot more about tonight, I think, from Fernando and Zach as well. A blurry picture, but a picture that's maybe worth a million words. So a puma and her cubs, and presuming one of these is a young male, it's going to do what all young males want to do and leave home and go find new territory. And for wide-ranging species like mountain lions, they're going to come up against barriers to that movement. And as we all are so familiar with, the barriers in this area to movement, like, well, whether it's intensive agriculture or development or roads, all those things are becoming increasingly barriers to wildlife movement. Roads being busier, agriculture maybe becoming more intensive, and of course development spreading. Next slide. So again, the Land Trust of Santa Cruz has been in this kind of unique and important position to work real collaboratively in this region, outside of our county, but in the broader Monterey Bay region, to help facilitate the kind of conservation planning that leads to important projects like a crossing over Highway 1 in collaboration with Caltrans. Over the course of the last 12 or 15 or probably 20 years, there have been many, many studies highlighting, again, the importance of this area for wildlife movement. I wanted to point out one study in particular that provided some very important data to help support and justify this wildlife crossing that Morgan and I are talking about. And that was a study called the Southern Santa Cruz Mountains Wildlife Connectivity Study. The official name is much longer, I think, but you can find out a lot more information about it online if you Google something like that. And this was a study that was carried out between 2018 and 2021. It was published in 2022 by Pathways for Wildlife, a wonderful group of researchers who do really important work in studying wildlife movement, and supported or funded by the Peninsula Open Space Trust Post, who again is another one of these local conservation organizations that's Land Trust of Santa Cruz County works real collaboratively with. So a really kind of key thing that came out of this study was, this study did a lot of things, but it also, importantly, it was focused on evaluating barriers to wildlife movement and assessing how good wildlife crossing was in this four-county, in this southern Santa Cruz Mountains area. So next slide. The previous slide mentioned 42 locations. One important thing that this study did was the establishment of an array of wildlife cameras, which was really important in capturing this data, again, that kind of supported the importance of a wildlife crossing in this area. Those 42 locations were looking at culverts and crossing locations and trying to evaluate them or assess them for how good of a job they were doing in allowing wildlife movement. And then that wildlife camera data was really important for pointing out some things that I'll mention. another part of the study was also roadkill survey. So an upshot that I wanted to highlight here is that as part of this study, the only locations or observations of mountain lions crossing the highways in this area was along Highway 101. And importantly, or unfortunately, also documented 3 mountain lion roadkills along Highway 101 in this area where, again, we're talking about a proposed highway crossing, and again, at the north end of this Rocks Ranch. So it turns out this is a really important area for wildlife movement in the area, and I think, again, something we're going to hear a little bit more about from Fernando. So next slide. And it wasn't just mountain lion, but of course, as Morgan pointed out, this is identified as a real hotspot for wildlife vehicle collisions of all type, deer, coyote, bobcat, and other things. Again, the yellow dots are showing the roadkill incidents, and you can see this big cluster at the north end of Rocks Ranch at this point on Highway 101, where again, we're proposing this crossing. And again, all this data is just really important for highlighting the importance or identifying where is a good location for a crossing. Next slide. And again, I think a really important piece of this report was this observational data, things like this. There's no good undercrossings under Highway 101 currently for mountain lions. So you see things like a mountain lion approaching a culvert like this, and then next slide, deciding it's no bueno and taking off. So this, in conjunction with the roadkill data, is really important for justifying and supporting this location for a highway crossing. Next slide. And then I'll let Morgan just sort of wrap up our little piece with describing a little bit more about what this crossing could look like.
Great, thanks, Mark. So shown here are just a couple of examples of constructed wildlife crossings, and these allow animals a way to traverse busy roads and highways safely, and really help decrease wildlife vehicle collision rates. In other states where these have been installed, they've seen collision rates decrease by about 90%. So they're very effective. Next slide, please. And so this is near and dear to my heart. This is a wildlife crossing that just went in District 5, Highway 17, a partner venture with many of the same partners we're working with here in San Benito. This is Highway 17 at Laurel Curve. And this crossing was completed in early 2023. And thanks to our partners, we've got monitoring going on there, camera work and all this. And since the crossing was opened up and installed, we've seen over 1,000 animals use it. That includes large animals like deer and mountain lions. So it's been a wonderful success, both for the wildlife, but also as a partner venture. It's really been a great model for us at Caltrans. Next slide, please. Oh, here we go. If you click this again, Neil, you can see our money shot. It's our first mountain lion going through. Right. The year after it was built. So very exciting. And I was actually the biologist on this project. So 10 years ago, I've been working. Started working with the Land Trust and a lot of other people. So it's just gives me chills even now, just looking at that video. Okay, last slide for us. All right, so I'm just going to circle back really quick to the San Benito 101 location and just give you a quick status update. So this spring, we finished our first phase of the project, a project initiation document. And that's basically a detailed feasibility and scoping document that we put out. And thanks to a grant from the Wildlife Conservation Board, we've been able to start up on the next phase of the project, which is the environmental analysis and project report. And so that is currently underway. And our preliminary engineering work is demonstrating that this is a good location for an overcrossing. And if you don't mind, I know I'm just at time, but I'd like to read a statement that is literally hot off the presses from our director today. So our district director, Scott Eads, sent this out for a press release. It said, "We've experienced great success with our completed wildlife crossing near Highway 17 in Santa Cruz County, and we eagerly await the completion of similar projects near US 101 at Rocks Road in San Benito County. We're proud to be part of these transformative projects to preserve wildlife in our district, while at the same time enhancing driver safety for all travelers." So that's it for me, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mark and Morgan. That was so interesting and exciting. Our next speaker is Dr. Fernando Nájera. He's the director of the UC Davis Wildlife Health Center California Carnivores program. Fernando is a wildlife research veterinarian with extreme interest and passion for wild carnivore medicine, ecology, and conservation. He enrolled in a PhD focused on the clinical evaluation of Sunda clouded leopards, mainland clouded leopards, and Sunda leopard cats in conservation programs. In the US, he served as a postdoctoral fellow at the St. Louis Zoo Institute for Conservation Medicine, investigating the link between disease prevalence and spatial ecology in bobcats and sympatric canids in Missouri. Fernando also serves on advisory teams for ocelot reintroduction efforts in Texas, the Iberian lynx reintroduction program in Castilla-La Mancha in Spain, and the Bornean clouded leopard program in Malaysia and Borneo. His current research portfolio at UC Davis Wildlife Health Center is focused on mountain lions and connectivity between subpopulations, habitat use, infectious disease and toxin exposure, interactions with other species, and methods of reducing conflicts between mountain lions, domestic animals, and people. Thank you so much.
Sorry for the long introduction. Thank you, Green Foothills, for inviting me, and thank you all for coming out and allowing me to talk about one of the things that I like the most, mountain lions. So the line for today, I will be speaking about why we need to conserve mountain lions, our role in the UC Davis Wildlife Health Center in our research with mountain lions. Then I will try to speak about the importance of connectivity for mountain lion demographics, and then what are we doing here in the Gabilan Range, and finally the hot topic, mountain lions and depredation prevention research. So why do we need to conserve mountain lions? So I'm going to try to give you three arguments. The first one, they are umbrella species. So almost 10 years ago, our colleagues at the University of Oxford identified mountain lions as umbrella species because their ecological needs, because they occupy such a variety of ecosystems, they overlap with multiple wildlife species. So at the end of the day, if we protect mountain lions, we're going to be protecting all the wildlife that live with them. The second one, mountain lions are keystone species, so they influence food webs, changes in community composition, prey dynamics. For example, mountain lion kills benefit a wide range of species, from invertebrates to avian scavengers. And one of the species that benefit most are black bears. And they benefited in just such a sensitive time of their lives, when they're out of hibernation and when they are raising their young. So this is a video of a mountain lion kill. We were trying to capture that animal, but Mama Bear had all the plans and displaced the mountain lion just to feed the babies. Well, mountain lions, in those areas that they are recognizing, they benefit us because they are reducing deer-bear populations. For example, in South Dakota, they are preventing $1.1 million in collision costs. Also, mountain lions may decelerate transmission for certain infectious diseases, such as chronic wasting disease. So because they prey selectively in infected deer, they may decrease the transmission rate between deers. And now that we're talking about these biological threats, let me mention about the feral pig population explosion. I'm sure that you guys are already familiar with all the negative impacts of these invasive species, but let me tell you that having mountain lions in the landscape may balance the populations, at least trying to decrease the expansion of the species. And I have a video here of another kill, one of my favorite cats, and he's 82. He's taking care of an adult pig. So pigs are part of the diet of mountain lions. And finally, their argument. They are flagship species, so they are so charismatic. They're so attractive to the public. So if you guys see this hot picture, you guys may see that this crowd, this stage is probably from a Taylor Swift concert. The truth is that this gathering was just for the celebration of life of one of the most famous cats of the US. B22. So mountain lions may serve as a link between people and the natural world. Next one. So for all these reasons, the UC Davis Wildlife Center is researching this species for more than 20 years. We initially focused on the southernmost part of the range in California. We're expanding efforts since 2016, along with our friends of Institute for Wildlife Studies in Motor County, and since 2022 in Central California. So our research topics, they are emerging of three major disciplines: veterinary medicine, ecology, and conservation. And you guys may see here all of those. I'm going to go through all of them. So our research in Central California is happening thanks to financial support from Wildlife Conservation Network, the permitting support from CDFW, and in-kind support for Santa Cruz County, and also in the Pacheco Pass with Santa Clara Valley Aguiladeros. So our main objective is to fill in data gaps with respect to habitat connectivity and gene flow. We are really concerned about habitat connectivity because there are already 10 genetically distinct populations of mountain lions in California, and 6 of them, they are endangered. They are in risk of inbreeding depression within 5 generations, in risk of extirpation within 50 years. So we click again, we see that we are in one of the areas where the population is at risk. So connectivity between subpopulation is key to long-term persistence. So to dig a little deeper and to try to understand more about connectivity, the importance of connectivity in mountain lion demographics, and the impact of linear barriers, I want to try to explain 2 important terms: dispersal and phylogeny. So I have this scenario for you guys with a northern population of mountain lions and a southern population of mountain lions. Males are the bigger ones. They can weigh up to 150 pounds. Females between 90 and 100 pounds. So we click, we're going to see that each individual has a territory. So males may have up to 150 to 100 square miles, and females between 50 and 75 square miles. So one male may have up to 2 or 3 females within their territory. So from all these individuals, I want you guys to watch these 2. Yeah, next one. So then have breeding season, love in the air, and it brings 3 beautiful kittens. So these kittens are going to stay with man until they are 12 to 20 months old. So when they are that age, they are as big as man. I have a picture to prove that. So man is in the front, the kitten is in the back. So kitten is already bigger than man. So next one. So at that age, they are really a little bit more independent. So females get a little bit away from mom and establish their territory next to mom, next to the natal range. That's the philopatry. It's really important to promote the growth of the population and the stability of the population. But males have other things in mind, and they disperse incredibly long distances to find other populations and to establish their range in another area, so they are enriching with their genes that other population. But what happened when we put a linear infrastructure between two subpopulations? So what females are going to do the same thing. We're going to stick next to mom, yes. And the male is going to try to go, and then, boom, he may cross the road, he may die, or he may explore the surroundings, 1 and 2, of the line, and sometimes the animal comes back to what he knows best, to the natural range. And then is when he can overlap with mom and sisters, and when it starts the inbreeding depression in the long term. So, inbreeding depression equals lower survival and reproduction, and we have seen here in California some signs of that. Poor sperm quality, undescended testes, and king tails. So apart from that, living within roads is pretty dangerous. This is an example of a female that we got caught in Southern California. You guys see the territory, the home range that is dissected by 241, and then he died actually blocked in one little road that in the last 4 months of her life, he crossed 21 times. So we have a video of her, in the next slide. Yes, crossing the road. You may play the video.
Just smaller too.
Alright. So, now in the Gabilans, what we're trying to do is trying to increase understanding of mountain lion connectivity along the main transportation corridor that separates the southernmost part of the Santa Cruz Mountains and the northern part of the Gabilan Range. So for that, we need to capture important mountain lions, we gather genetic samples, then we analyze the data, we facilitate the data to other agencies and our partners. So first we need to locate mountain lions in the landscape. We use camera traps, thanks to our help of our wildlife biologist, Calvin Duncan, that is here today. I want to spoil you in, man, over there. And after we understand how the animals move, we place baits in the landscape. And when we see that the animal is invested in the baits, when we place the traps. This is what usually happens. The animal trying to see what is going on in the area where the animal was feeding just a few hours ago. First, the animal is a little bit confused, but usually we get the animal. It seems easy, but sometimes we may have other outcome. You may see the video. This happened here in Highlands. So we have the trap over there, taste it inside, and the animal has other business in mind. So that may happen as well. Another scenario would be this one. When we have the animal really invested in the trap, and then we play the video, see what happens. Never seen that cat again. There is other challenges here. So whether the weather rain is preventing us from access length, disturbance of bait, we may talk to Calvin about this, but all kind of species, and the most annoying ones for us, if you press again, you guys are not going to believe that, is cows and wild boars. Calvin may talk about this a lot. Next one. So once we have the animal in the trap, see, this is how we operate. We anesthetize the animal, we just weigh the animal, we just put fluids, put the collar, take blood samples, and then when the animal everything is done, then we place it in a safe place just for the animal to recover. Sometimes We do this in the middle of the winter. We see the next video, so we need to cover the animal with some rain jackets. This one that is mine, so the animal is waking up. Very cold winter in some of our study sites, so they benefit from having that. But so somebody finds a black jacket. It's gone. I really like that jacket. Next one. So in the Gabilan, we have captured 2 individuals thanks to the help of Zach Mills and the city of W. So one in last year, M338, young adult male, because of a depredation event in alpacas, and this year, M409, another young adult male, depredation event on goats. So once we have the collar on, we may press, and we have all the data, and then the sky is the limit for us in regard of analysis. So we may see what kind of habitat the animal is using when they're moving through the landscape. We can detect kill sites, dead sites. We can actually see the maximum area, you may press again, maximum area that the animal is using. We can analyze what is the home range, again please, or even the core range. Yeah. But in this scenario, one of the things that is more important for us, and what we can do with this data is, you may press again. So when we have all the data, click, we can analyze how animals are moving in relation to major roadways. So we can respond to questions like, how did the mountain lion cross the road? So we can see if the animal used culverts, what type of culverts, if the animal did an upgrade, what kind of landscape features are associated with the crossing, etc. So, as you guys see, we have been working much in the southern part, east part of the 101, so we don't have much information real time of mountain lions in aromas, but we run a model about puma habitat selection. So you guys see high probability of use in the darker green, and then we press again to see where is aromas. You guys see that there's some cool areas where mountain lions may have high probability of use. And if we click again, we see this National Land Cover Database, we see the forest patches that the animals are going to be using for coverage. So it's a really good spot. But maybe the interaction that you guys may have with mountain lions is because of depredation. So I want to speak really fast about depredations. And the prevention of this is paramount for Pacific coexistence and mountain lion survival, because it's one of the main threats for mountain lions. Next. In this study, yes, the depredation permit and kill illegally, they are almost the same as vehicle strikes. So I know that it's really bad to do profiling, but I have to do it. So at any moment in their life, a mountain lion, any mountain lion may kill livestock. But we have to pick a group of individuals. We may say that it could be our first susceptible group will be dispersal individuals, as you guys may see in the past with our own animals, young adult pumas that recently left the native range. They had been spoiling them for so long, and now looking for native prey is pretty hard. So if they see easy prey, they're going to go for it. Second group will be females with dependent kittens. It's really hard to raise those animals at those ages. So if they see easy prey, they're going to go for it. And finally, injured individuals that they are unable to hunt. So if they see livestock, it's pretty easy for them. They're going to go for it. So our research is back since 2021. We have used several conflict mitigation techniques, such as deterrence. So these motion trigger devices that they do noises and human recordings and lights, and we use preventive husbandry. So this is how it works for our deterrent device testing at artificial bait sites. So we see in the base of the tree, you guys see the deer, and then in the top, you guys see a device over there. You may play the video. So now it's triggered. It's a shame that you guys cannot see the sound. But it's a really annoying sound. Next slide. I'm finishing as fast as I can. Next slide. Okay, so we have seen that we have a success of 64% of the cases when we use the terrorist device alone or in combination. We don't have many examples with the terrorist device testing at the predation sites, but coloring conflict pumas, they give us a lot of information. So for example, here, we click again, we see this cluster of positions next to a goat pen, so we can work proactively in that site to avoid more depredations. And if we follow the line and we click again, we see another cluster as well next to a goat pen. So at that point, we are proactive and we put some deterrence devices. We can check this video. This is what we can get. As we see the animal scared. Next one. This is another video. Sometimes the animals are so fixed, they are so rewarded because of that easy prey, they don't care much. So, at this point, we need to put in place a plan B. So it's just calming, getting the outfit of hero, and try to reinforce the goat pen to avoid more depredation. So the animal was fixed in the spot, next slide, but was unable to get more goats. So as a summary, I didn't slide, I swear. So the predation prevention is based on proactive measurement. So we don't need to wait until we have a mountain lion killer livestock. We need to be proactive. Then husbandry practices that Zach's gonna talk everything about it, and then we can use the terrorist devices. So all of this combined is gonna promote coexistence with this wonderful species. So that's what I have.
Thank you so much, Fernando. Before I introduce our next speaker, I just want to remind everybody that you should all have pens and 3x5 cards at your seat, so please remember to write down any questions you might have. Following our speakers, we'll have a panel discussion and a Q&A. And as soon as you write your questions down, if you hold up your 3x5 cards, Alice will come around and collect them. So yeah, if you have any questions already written, hold them up in the air, she'll come grab them. Thank you. Thank you again. Our next speaker is Zach Mills, who is a district wildlife biologist for Monterey and San Benito counties for the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. Prior to arriving to California, Zach's research focused on large carnivore physiology and behavior in response to extreme climatic conditions. Zach enjoys storytelling and sharing his adventures from the field with public audiences and working with landowners to achieve wildlife management goals.
I'm not sure there's much left for me to say, but I'll try. My name is Zach Mills. I'm the district biologist for Monterey and San Benito. And what I'm going to try to do in this talk, and disclaimer, I'm a pacer, so I'm going to walk around in front of the screen. What I'm going to try to do is synthesize everything that you guys have already heard in a way that makes sense for how the state wants to manage wildlife, particularly in this area, but I'm going to also talk about the rest of Monterey and San Benito as well. Well, this clicker doesn't work. Go ahead. Yeah, so when I think of wildlife, I generally have to, because of how my brain works, I'm going to take you guys on a journey through my brain, I have to think of things at the human level, right? So why does an animal move the way it does, right? So I've spent a considerable amount of time in my career trying to understand the motivation for animals to move or make decisions on the landscape. And generally, and I've enjoyed watching everybody else's talk because we hit on the same exact topics, just a little bit differently, but we all hit on this one. Love. Fernando especially hit on that one. Shelter, food, water. These are the big things that make an animal make a decision to go from point A to point B. So when I think of that on a personal level, I think of, what made me get off the couch? Was I going to the fridge to get food? Was I going to get something to drink? Was there someone down the hall I was interested in? These are the decisions, same at the animal level, these are the decisions that make, or the things that make an animal make a decision to move. These are called intrinsic factors, right? So animals generally follow the same Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the same reasons to move are defending their own condition, right? Next slide. But then there's extrinsic factors. So for example, hunting season, fire, environmental change, weather, extreme events. These are all things that push an animal to make a decision to move as well. So we're dealing with intrinsic and extrinsic factors. A little background in ecology. Next slide. Big thing is, how the heck do we measure this? So thanks to Julie and Calvin, they brought one of these with them tonight. So we've shown you a lot of data, but we've actually not shown you how we're getting that. And so we're getting those from GPS collars. You've seen a couple on mountain lions, but I've got one in my hand. This is a male, I think this is a male GPS collar. But they come in all different shapes and sizes. So what this little device does, so facing up is a GPS, facing down is a battery. This is probably 2 pounds, 3 pounds maybe. And that structure right there is sending a signal based on our programming to a satellite. That satellite then generally dumps to our computer, or we can have a receiver that we connect to it if we're within range. It has a VHF signal, which is a radio signal that we can follow. Everything comes from this device here. It also has a triaxial accelerometer, at least I would imagine these guys do. And that tells us the animal's pitch and posture, right? So if the animal turns its head, if it bends down to eat, if it's drinking, anything it's doing, we can record through fancy algorithms that come through data that this device gets. So in this landscape, and I want you guys to know that because there may come a day that you see a collar on an animal, and I'd love to hear about it. Or in the case of depredation events, these animals are the ones that maybe appear that we don't want them to appear. But they look like any number of collars. Sometimes there's an antenna sticking out. This teardrop shape is generally for ungulates, so deer or elk, you might see it on those species, but you'll see them as small as bobcats, coyotes, and I anticipate that you'll see some collars on animals as we ramp up our efforts to really look at how animals are using this corridor. That's a background on how GPS collars work. Go to the next slide. But this is what we can do with a GPS collar, and Fernando did a great job of showing us some of this data. So this is just a figure I've used in some of my Africa research. So one of the things that's important here in this landscape is our capacity to use a geofencing feature, which means we can put an imaginary fence around an area and say if this animal's in this area, ramp up the sample rate. So if it's by the 101, increase that sample rate to, what are we at, 15 minutes when it's by the 101? We could also do that for a depredation event. We could do that for any number of things. So as soon as this animal crosses this imaginary line, boom, we're getting a lot of data because it's informing where we might put a structure. It's in Africa, I would use this to say, uh-oh, hyenas are in the village, point children in. A little bit different from mountain lions, but any number of these things we can look at through these GPS collars. So we have landscape covariates, we have the animals, there's a mortality, so if that accelerometer stops, it's in a certain position, we can respond very quickly to understand why that animal passed away. In fact, that happened in the past 6 months. Julie and Kelvin contacted me on a call that we had out, and there was a deceased mountain lion that we know fairly quickly. You can go to the next slide. Again, I have to think through things through the human lens. So this is one of my favorite publications, and it's a researcher who decided to track himself to talk about a human home range. So he tracks himself and publishes a paper in ecology on his home range. So Fernando mentioned it, where you've got core home ranges. So we've got this big area, right? This big area we occupy. So he showed a big area for that Gabilan mountain lion. But clearly there are core areas, and time is a variable, right? Animals spend most time in areas that are their core zones. So this guy's name was Roger. Roger, this is what his home range looked like if you were an ecologist and just mapped it, but this is what that map looked like. So he's a biologist, here's his home, he had, I think he had dog training class right here, just areas that he spends time, the grocery store, etc. So I like to think of this in the concept of ecology as well. Why are animals doing what they do, right? They have the proverbial grocery store, which unfortunately sometimes are goats, deer, etc. They have places they like to forage, they have places they like to drink, they have places they like to breed, and we think of the same exact thing in Roger's little home range here as a bigger animal's home range. So I'm trying not to fall in the mountain lion trap because we can do this for multi-taxing. Go to the next slide. Now, just as Fernando said, what happens when you throw a feature in the middle of that home range that impedes Roger from going to his dog training class, right? Roger can't train his dog, or he can't go to the grocery store. And that's what I'm trying to demonstrate here. Now, historically, before humans, this was in the form of geographic isolation, mountain ranges, rivers, etc. But if there was a flow through that mountain range, you could share genetic traits with populations. Now, what these linear barriers do is they represent the proverbial mountain range that maybe happened, 100,000 years ago in contemporary era. And the issue with that becomes, we talked a lot about seeing the inbreeding depression in the extinction vortex because of inbreeding, but generally think of if an animal doesn't have the rich genetic features that we would think of in a species that has connectivity, they're much less resilient as a population. So think of any, natural disaster, disease outbreak. You don't have the diversity to bolster the population to maintain appropriate breeding levels because you don't have genetic diversity in the population. So, we can go to the next slide, sorry. So this is an omniscape image of Monterey. So there's Monterey Peninsula right here. This is Salinas, this is the Gabilans. So these barriers, and I like this because it is really striking how these barriers are inhabited by people. So what we're seeing as far as the purple, the pink, the red, these are human settlements, traffic, just human presence between these ranges. So this is one that I'm really focused on right now. This is 68 in Monterey. This is Fort Ord. So this is like the Santa Lucia Mountains coming through Toro Park, if you're familiar. And this is really, if you think of it through this lens, this is the only space that animals have to marry those two areas. So I'm getting out of thinking of just the one-on-one corridor, but this phenomenon that we're seeing where we restrict this movement between areas is a pretty pervasive reality, and this really captures that. You can go to the next slide. Moving on to the next topic, which is collisions, vehicle collisions and roadkill. So this is from the Road Ecology Institute at UC Davis as well. And we all hit on the topic of roadkill, but this is a map, just raw data of the amount of animals that we're seeing, I don't know how many years this spans, but deceased on the road in California, deceased on roadways in California. So obviously we're up here, you can go to the next slide. And we're gonna start to look at our particular area. So this is where we're looking right here. So this is large mammals that are struck on vehicles per mile. So 4 to 8 per year in that particular stretch of road that we're talking about. So mind you, when an animal hits a road, they've got two options, like as Fernando said. They can cross and there can be direct mortality, which is they're struck by a vehicle, or they can turn around and they're facing indirect concerns, which is the loss of genetic diversity. And so it's really a double-edged sword. They're kind of screwed either way. But obviously they've got animals attempting to use that landscape. Then obviously there's a financial strain of that. So this is the Central Coast. This is the total cost 2016 to 2023. About $70 million of damage to vehicles and vehicle-animal collisions in that time span. Go next. Fernando also presented something similar to this, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, but I like this figure, which is looking at that southern population of mountain lions, because you can really see how their home ranges, so their home ranges are these dotted lines and solid lines that are bounded oftentimes by roads. So you can see how those roads are forcing their home range, that concept that we just talked about with Roger, and what Fernando had previously presented, are confining their space use so that we are subjecting them to loss of genetic diversity. One concept that's really hard for me to articulate to the public is, just because you see abundant animals does not mean they're genetically well, right? So if you go down south to 400 Lake and you're looking at 500 Tule elk, there's a lot of them, right? I agree with you, there's a lot of Tule elk. But the genetic material to make up those 500 Tule elk came from 3 Tule elk. So you have this bottleneck, right? And just because there's 500 doesn't mean they can sustain the next disease outbreak, the next fire, the next whatever, because it's that diversity that gives us phenotypic variation that allows the species to persist long term. So what we're seeing down here in Southern California is these real restricted ranges of species, these are mountain lions, that are unable to move across those roads. So they've learned they're either going to get hit or they breed with their sister. They breed with their sister, or their niece or their nephew. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, I think at this point in time, you guys have seen some rendition of this figure. This is the Agora Hills overpass. I was fortunate to be able to collect several animals for this project, so that's one that's near and dear to my heart. The bottom line is, to facilitate this genetic exchange, these crossings are absolutely imperative. You can go to the next slide. So I'm gonna have kind of a harsh transition here, which is how you can help this effort, how you can help on the ground, how you can help me. Generally, if you report some sort of wildlife, really anything on this landscape, it's going to somehow filter up to me. If it's mountain lion specifically, you may deal with Calvin or Fernando, but generally, if it's wildlife in this landscape, it's going to come to my desk at some point in time, and I want people to know how to engage with me. So, I put this as the depredation permitting process. However, a depredation word is not the best word because you can do this for any animal. If you just want to tell me you saw a mink in Carmel Valley, follow these instructions, it will come right to my desk, and there will be a geospatially referenced point in the database of California that someone thinks or they saw a mink in Carmel Valley. You can click through these next bullets. So the first thing is contact CDFW staff. So on the end of this, you're going to see my contact information. I encourage everybody to take it down. Submit a wildlife incident report, and I'm going to go through that shortly. Generally, if it's a depredation, again, this is depredation. If you've truly lost property, lost livestock, lost anything, I'm going to be there. I say 48 hours, but I'm going to be there pretty quickly. I want to tell you why, specifically giving two examples for the mountain lions that Fernando presented. Mountain lions think that a mountain lion killed something, and it's not a mountain lion. More times than not, it's a coyote, it's a feral dog, it's not a mountain lion. Go to the next. And one key concept in this landscape is that we're going to talk about lethal versus non-lethal depredation. You can go ahead. Next slide. So, California Fish and Game Code mandates non-lethal management of mountain lions in that zone that Fernando presented, which essentially extends from San Francisco to Mexico. So we are not going to lethally manage mountain lions in this area. The only time it can be lethally managed is if it is a public safety threat, an imminent threat to public safety, which means in this moment, someone's life is in jeopardy because of that mountain lion. It does happen. I have had mountain lions that are under someone's vehicle, they're under someone's stoop. I've never had to lethally manage one. I've immobilized them and I've taken them out of there. Let me go to the next slide. So this is the platform right here, the Wildlife Incident Reporting Platform. So if you just Google WIR CDFW, this is the gateway to report anything wildlife. Again, it doesn't have to be a mountain lion, it doesn't have to be a bobcat, it doesn't have to be depredation. You just want to reach CDFW about something that you're seeing, experiencing. It can be a bird die off, it can be you saw an animal that you don't know, anything. Go to the Wildlife Incident Reporting Platform, and as soon as you click Monitor San Benito County, it will go immediately to my email, and it gets prioritized in my email. Go to the next. I'm just going to talk very briefly about how to prevent depredation. Fernando did a good job of touching on this, but I do like to summarize with this. There are different forms of deterrence, from physical, like fencing and security closures, sounds, which Fernando also presented, and lights are a visual one that he also presented. Livestock guardian dogs are a great one as well that we're seeing a lot of success in this landscape. Go ahead. Biggest thing though is prevention. We're just going to transition to husbandry and then I'll be done. Go ahead. So, reduce attractants. So I'm going to focus on husbandry for like the next 90 seconds, but the biggest thing is reducing attractants and limiting free-ranging animals. So for example, feral cats seem to be the biggest one that starts conflict. You get feral cats around, and mountain lions perceive them, and bobcats for that matter, not only perceive them as prey, but also territorial. So there's kind of a two-edged sword there, a two-edged piece there that brings in conflict. And it always seems to start there for me. You can keep clicking through. Appropriately discard food resources, protect and secure any attractants. You can just flip right through that now. And go ahead. Keep going. What I want to focus on is securing your enclosure. So this is a fence, right? The truth is, if there's a 6-foot fence, which is a recommendation for a lot of the animals, mountain lion can clear that fence, no problem. Building an overhang into your fence, if you're going to do it, if you're going to invest, actually helps keep mountain lions out of a fenced enclosure. So a fence like this, it's an A+ for me. This is it in cross-section. We'll go to the next. These are all enclosures, and they are all very cute. However, they are all garbage if a mountain lion decides to come along and take a go. This one looks good, but this is easy pickings for a mountain lion. Go right up and over that. This one, obviously, right up and over. And the truth is, we see them go in structures all the time. But it's not just mountain lions, bobcats, coyotes, they'll all do it. What you do for a mountain lion to reduce depredation is transferable across species. Go to the next. These are good enclosures. So I think people have the impression that making a secure enclosure is a huge investment, but it's not. One of the greatest stories I had recently was was a family who was experiencing mountain lion depredation and told me they didn't have the funds to build an enclosure. And so I just tried to brainstorm with them. We sorted out some ideas, and I came there a week later, and they had harvested roadside waste and built this wonderful enclosure and bought a radio from Goodwill that they framed in, and they ran the cables all the way to their house so they could talk radio all night long. And I thought, job well done. So they didn't spend a cent on it, and they did a great job, and they haven't had issues since. So you can go to the next. This is just showing the deterrent. This is a different, I think it's actually also UC Davis. You can play this, but you guys have the gist of what these noise deterrents do. But to deter secure enclosures is the biggest thing you can do. Go ahead. Next slide. Here's some resources for you guys generally to just think about wildlife conflict, how to engage. But then the last slide, which I believe is the next one, is just my information. If you ever need to reach me directly, I would encourage you to take it. There you go. Thanks, Casper.
Hello. Okay, there we go. Thank you so much, Zach. So many great speakers. Really appreciate all of you. Our final speaker of the evening is Chairman Valentin Lopez. Chairman Lopez has served as chair of the Almamuxan Tribal Band since 2003 and the president of the Almamuxan Land Trust since its inception. Chairman Lopez is a Native American advisor to the University of California Office of the President. He's also a Native American advisor to the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Valentin is actively involved in efforts to restore tribal indigenous knowledge and ensure their history is accurately told.
Thank you all. It's really a pleasure to be here. I grew up in Morgan Hill, and my freshman year in high school, we moved to San Martin. It was a huge move. Anyway, and we came down to this territory here a lot. We ran Rock's Ranch, just trespassing, but just love being back there, you know. And we did poach for food. And it's just incredible. I always like to start, I'm the chairman of the Almamuxan Tribal Band, and our tribe is comprised of the descendants of those that were taken to missions, San Juan Bautista and Santa Cruz. I also have lineage, or descendancy rather, to Mission Santa Barbara, Mission San Carlos, and Mission Santa Clara. So we were a labor force and we got moved around a lot. Our creation story tells us the Creator put us here very specifically to take care of Mother Earth and all living things. And that's something that our ancestors took very, very seriously. And they saw it as just a directive, an absolute directive directly from Creator that they had to do. And so they studied hard. They studied how to take care of their environment. They studied what their plants were for. What plants were for food, for medicines, for crafting, for women's care, for babies' care, for housing, for clothing, for tools, for cooking, etc. They also studied about how to care for the native plants. For example, with our native plants, they would see a plant here and say that plant chose to be here. And Creator put that plant here. And so they took care of it in that area. They wouldn't see a plant here and say, well, this is a beautiful plant. Let's go put it on the mountainside. It'll look better over there. How do you approve of what Creator did? You don't, And so our people would grow that into a patch, and the patch would get bigger and bigger and bigger. And depending on the needs of that, it was a food plant that was important for deer, for elk, etc. they would grow it to ensure that that deer and elk population had an adequate food supply. And that's the way they did it. They saw everything, the plants, the wildlife, the mountains, the shade, the wind, the sun, the stars, everything underground. They saw that as a relative. And the way they got to that it was a relative, is they have the same father that we do, Father Sky or Creator. And they have the same mother, Mother Earth. Mother Earth nourishes them and takes care of them. And so when you see all things as a relative, and the way that our ancestors did, it's just like whenever we have a son or a daughter or a baby, you want to love it, you want to be gentle with it, take care of it, and talk to it, pray for it, listen to it, learn from it. And that's what our ancestors did with their environments. They learned that those plants were gifts from Creator, and they were to be used properly. And so to learn how our food plants and stuff like that, we followed, we learned a lot from the bear. We would see what the bear would eat, and then we knew that those plants were good for us and such. So that's why we selected our food, by learning from the bear. By the way, this right here, this greater area of the greater Bay Area, the greater Monterey Bay Area rather, was the most heaviest population of grizzly bear in the United States. The most heaviest population of grizzly bear right here in this area. This right here was also the most populated area of indigenous people in the United States. But think about it. The resources, the fresh water, the salt, the creeks, the rivers, the oceans. The fish resources were just tremendous. The plant resources were tremendous. The climate was perfect. The grizzly bears here did not have to hibernate because the winters were mild enough and there was plenty enough of food resources that they did not have to hibernate. And so we had the responsibility to ensure that those food resources were there. And that's why we took care of it. We learned that fire was a tool. It was a tool for managing land. It was a tool that kept us warm when it was cold, gave us light when it was dark, allowed us to cook our foods. But it was an important tool for managing landscapes too. The coastal, along the coast from Monterey up to about Half Moon Bay, that was an incredible coastal prairie. When those early explorers were coming by in the 1500s, they wrote in the journals that the landscape looked like a beautiful mosaic of a bunch of different colors and plants. And so that right there is when we grew things in patches. I mentioned that we grew things in patches. That's what they were seeing. They were seeing all the different patches that our people had grown and done all along that area. There was no trees in that coastal prairie because our people would burn frequently. They would burn every 3, 5, 7 years. They would burn, and they learned how to burn so that it enhanced the landscapes. How to, like a lot of the seed plants, for example, those seeds have a very hard shell, and they need some kind of disturbance to germinate. And so the fire would allow that. And so after a fire, you just get a tremendous burst of seed plants. And those were important food plants for birds and many other seed-eating animals, and even ourselves. At times, our diet would be 40% seed. So, so we took care of that. We took care of it for the bushy plants. There's a certain way that you burn for those bushy plants, for basketry plants, and for other tools, you would burn different ways. The hazelnut tree, as an example, there are special burning practices for the hazelnut. But this is what our ancestors learned. They were here. People say they came 15,000 years ago, over the Bering Strait. But there was something that's called the Great Kelp Highway, and it connected Japan all the way down to Chile. The Great Kelp Highway. And for thousands of years, there's a campsite, a village site rather, down in Chile that's 19,600 years old. And that right there was that people believe and figure out that it was the Great Kelp Highway that got the people there. And, so don't believe that 15,000 years. Here in we also did the oceans. I'll tell you one story about the ocean. There's one of the most impressive ocean sites is north of Santa Cruz. We keep it confidential. It's 7,500 years old, and it was continuously occupied for 7,500 years. What are the chances that Aromas will be here 7,500 years now? And that right there, whenever you study that, we went out there with archaeology teams from UC Santa Cruz, Berkeley, Stanford, and others to do research of that. And one finding that just blows me away is that whenever you look at through well over 60 feet of a shell mountain, all the mussel shells are the same size. They're all the same size. So whenever they harvested, harvesting was a very important part of being sustainable. They wouldn't take the larger ones because those right there were needed for future generations. And the younger ones, they were allowed to reach maturity before they would be harvested. And that's a very important practice. Now, they go out there with scrapers, and they go out there with nets, and they just take everything. And there's not, you will not have any sustainability doing it that way. There's a lot more that we're doing. We've been doing research since 2006 on the ways of our ancestors in the past, and we really have learned a lot. There's a publication that's going to be coming out here fairly soon on our results and the impact of climate change, because during that time there was periods of extreme hot and periods of extreme cold, and we're studying the effects on the food plants and the diet of the members during those periods of heat and cold. But then came the mission period, and that mission period was just so brutal on us. They came in with horses and weapons and soldiers and aggression. And they were here to dominate the indigenous people, to destroy our culture, destroy our spirituality, destroy our traditional knowledge and our environments, and force us to convert and to assimilate, to become subjects of Spain, and to assimilate to the Christian and accept the Christian religion. And if we didn't, a directive from the Pope said that we were to be vanquished. Indigenous people were to be vanquished if they did not accept that assimilation. They separated the men from the women from the children. Day one at the missions, and that was to get them to. The only way they get their family back is if they agreed to assimilate and accept those conditions. And Mission San Bautista, the priest report, a questionnaire was sent out in 1823 asking a number of questions. And one of the questions they asked is, how many Indians died at your mission? Mission San Bautista was established in 1797. And then in 1823, 26 years later, they reported that 19,421 Indians died at San Bautista. And there were still 10 more years of the mission period to go. At the missions, they would separate the men from the women from the children. Well, first of all, the way they would capture the Indians, you hear the way the story that's told now is that the Indians came voluntarily to the missions, that the Indians came to learn agriculture. We learned how to take care of our environment. We had food sources year round for us and for every other species, but we came to learn agriculture, that we came to find a better life, and that we came to find God. Our people knew about the lands, and the most important part of taking care of Mother Earth was maintaining its spirit, keeping it sacred. Our people developed ceremonies and prayers, etc., for that purpose of maintaining that sacredness. And that's how our ancestors took care of the land. There was a lot of prayer, a lot of ceremony. but they came to teach us, they came to teach us about God. That women barracks, and night after night the soldiers would go in there. The soldiers didn't bring wives, the soldiers didn't bring girlfriends or female companionship, so the soldiers were going into those barracks night after night and raping the women. And you look at the mission records and it says, Father unknown, Father unknown, Father unknown, on so many births because of that. I started to say the way they would capture them, the soldiers would come on in and attack a village in the early morning hours when everybody was still asleep. And the Indians would take off running and they would target the women. The soldiers targeted the women. When they captured the women, they started tying them together, thumb to thumb, and make a human chain out of that. And then they would march them back. And they knew the children would naturally follow their mothers. And then they knew it was just a matter of a very short period of time before the men came in to be with their wives and with their families. That's how they were taken to the missions. What we're talking about now are wildlife corridors. And these are our relatives. I heard them talk about, mention the word coyote, mention the word mountain lions and goats and stuff like that. Those are our relatives. They're cultural resources to us. And the wildlife corridors and stuff like that, those are cultural resources to us. And we have a responsibility, and it is a moral responsibility. Because the Amamutsin were the only ones that was given moral authority to take care of these lands. And Creator never rescinded our obligation and our responsibility to take care of these territories, regardless of our history, the mission period, the Mexican period, the American period. Those three periods reduced the population size of our tribe by over 98%. Can you imagine that? 98%. We still have, the elders remind us, regardless of that history, Creator never rescinded that obligation for us to take care of our territory and our lands. And so, today that's what we have. We developed an Amamutsin Land Trust. Well, first of all, we started at Pinnacles in 2006, we started at Pinnacles, then we got involved with state parks and the Bureau of Land Management, and then the Land Trust and the open space districts and the city and county parks. And we started working with them to bring back and to restore the traditional practices of our ancestors. A big part of that is restoring the native plants. The way that we stewarded and took care of our native plants, they developed very deep root systems. A lot of our grasslands will go 15, 20 feet deep. Those grasses, those deep roots, they're very resistant to fire, to flood, to drought. And they're also very resistant to disease, because that plant has a responsibility to take care of a community. And that community included the fungi. It included the insects, the birds, the four-legged, and people. And so that plant had to be very, very hardy to provide for those. And our ancestors knew that, and that's the way they took care of them. So today, a lot of people are going back to the native plants for that deep root system, to be resistant to the environment. But also the other advantages, they prevent slides and erosion and stuff like that. So we're working hard to bring that back. We're working hard to bring back fire to our territory as well. We have a stewardship the goals of our land trust are to preserve and protect our sacred cultural sites. There's few of them remaining. Over 10,000 cultural sites have been destroyed in the greater San Jose area down Oregon Hill, Gilroy. Over 10,000 cultural sites have been destroyed. Here in San Benito County, it has not been as disturbed. And this is very important to our tribe. We would like to get to know these lands again. We recognize that the current laws, I don't know if we agree with them or not, but the current laws recognize it as your property, and we respect that. And, but we would like to have access to our sites, if you're aware of cultural sites and stuff like that. Well, our tribe would like to know it, and we'll keep it confidential. I looked, today, for this meeting, I drove down from Sacramento, I speak for 20 minutes, and I drive home. And that's a long ride. But this meeting here was important enough. I wanted to get to know the community. I've spoken in Gilroy, Morgan Hill, Hollister, Santa Cruz, the greater Santa Cruz, quite a bit, stuff like that. This is my first time speaking here in Lomas, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity. I'd like to get to know you better. Our tribe would like to get to know you better. So please know that we're here, and please reach out to us. And let's we have to heal together. We do. Our tribe recognizes that because of that history, we have a lot of healing to do. The land has a lot of healing to do. But we have relationships that have to be formed, and we have to heal together. I'll stop there. Thank you very much.
One question that we had, that I wanted to lead off with was, thank you, it would be great to have resources to respond to people who comment on Nextdoor about problems with wildlife. So will the slides be available? And with our speakers, we Foothills can convert them to PDFs and send them out in email. So if you are already RSVP'd for this meeting, then we have your email, we can send it out to you. If you're still walking, you didn't RSVP online, then please give us your email. We have sign-in sheets at the front table, and then we can send you a follow-up email after this event with the slides attached. So we'll cover that. Well, okay, here's an easy one. So how can we get in touch with the Amamutsu?
Well, we have an amamutsun.org website, AMAHMUTSUN website, and we also have an Amamutsun Land Trust website. And you can email us at info@there. Also, we have a newsletter. Our Amamutsun Land Trust has a quarterly newsletter that has a lot of our tribal activity. And you can sign up to receive our newsletters. There we talk about the research that we've done. We talk about, we invite people to come out to learn about native plants at the greenhouse that we have. We do a lot of plant propagation of native plants and stuff like that. So you can learn a lot on our website. Thank you.
We've got 2 microphones now. So here's one. Can you share a tentative schedule for the Rocks Ranch crossing project? Is there a tentative cost estimate? How will it be funded? Mark, here.
Yeah, so as Morgan pointed out, Caltrans is just in their environmental planning phase. The Land Trust was able to help them secure this WCB grant, which is $6 million towards getting through that planning and permitting. But as you can imagine, that's like a 2-year process, and then there'll be a lot of fundraising. I mean, their estimates, it could be somewhere in the $50 million range. So there'll be a lot of fundraising. And that Wallace-Annenberg Foundation, the Wallace-Annenberg crossing down in the Santa Monica Mountains that Zach hinted at is kind of the model for it, and that took about 10 years. So, it will be a while, but we got a lot of momentum towards it, so we're just trying to keep that momentum going for it.
So we have a question directed to Fernando. What's the difference between proactive measures versus husbandry practices?
Well, they are compatible. So proactive measurements, meaning that we don't need to wait until we have livestock depredation. So we know that we live in mountain lion country, so that opportunity may exist in the future. So before having an incident with a mountain lion, we need to be proactive and put in place all the tools that we are learning about to just prevent that it happens. Because once it happens, it's really hard to take the animal out of that situation. You guys have seen the examples.
No, I mean, I think that covers it. But yeah, we deal with a lot of conflict that could have easily been avoided. And I think a lot of times people want me to just come capture this mountain lion and take it somewhere else. The truth is, more times than not, when we do that, it's going to walk right back. It might take it a few weeks, but it's going to be back. And also, I think one thing that we didn't necessarily talk about is, if we remove a mountain lion from a conflict situation, it may destabilize that entire mountain lion population. So let's say, for example, we have, I'm trying to think of like an age class, but let's say we take out a dominant male, right? That dominant male, as Fernando had said, I like to think of mountain lion home ranges as a bit of a Venn diagram where you've got these females who intersect in resource-rich areas and a male who takes up that whole space, right? We pull out that male, and then all of a sudden, every other male that's jockeying for some territory is going to move in, and they're going to cause problems. And I think people think two things. One, we take that mountain lion away, we fix the problem. Again, they can come right back. Or the problem might gain momentum, because we might all of a sudden invite 3 more mountain lions in to that situation. And I generally tell folks, the best caretaker of a landscape in the realm of mountain lions is a big, well-behaved male mountain lion, because he keeps everybody else away. And the deal is, sometimes I even tell him, sometimes you have to pay the fee to the tax man because, he's the one taking care of you. But anyways, all that to say, just because we pull them out doesn't mean we stop being proactive. If a mountain lion moves on, it's going to come back in that area. You continue to be proactive if you don't see him. And someday that mountain lion is going to die, and there's going to be another mountain lion in the area. And we continue to be proactive, as Fernando had said.
So here's a question. So how do animals know how to use the wildlife crossing? How do we encourage them to use it?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. Generally, with a lot of these crossing structures, there are some fencing of some sort that really funnels them into that area over a fairly large area. I don't know exactly what you guys are proposing for this one, but sometimes even up to 1 kilometer in some bigger ones. So that when they hit that fence, it kind of naturally filters them there. But the other thing is, animals figure out safe crossing spots as well. It's ingrained in them, so that they find them as well, but we can sometimes facilitate that. I don't know if anyone wants to expand on that.
Well, as using our previous data of how the animals move near the roadways, may give us a hint of where to put that wildlife crossing structure. So it's something more natural for the animal to move to that area that already knows. So, and thanks to the fencing, it's going to funnel into that spot. So,
I'm just going to say one more thing. Maybe 2 months ago, we all sat at Rocks Ranch. We had a workshop at Rocks Ranch, and one of the concepts we brought up was that animals, when they make a decision to cross a road or really cross anything, they really love to look for forest cover to forest cover, right? They don't love to expose themselves. So generally, if you see a forested area to a forested area, that's the habitat they want to cross from and to. And it just gives them a sense of security. So in pretty much every connectivity model, forest cover is a big predictor of crossing location. So yeah, just like Fernando said, there's certain variables that we can hedge our bets on and predict, but they also, when we get that spatial data, they tell us, we don't just say this looks like a good spot. They tell us where to go.
So we have a question for Chairman Lopez. Does Animal Bootsy view so-called invasive species as plants or animals as similar or as valuable as native species? Is there a difference?
Yeah, we are trying to restore our native plants, and we do remove a lot of invasives or non-native plants. We're trying to restore them. The same way that like myself, I have my diabetes, and I have, you know, all these other things caused by the diet and stuff like that. And, you know, everyone in my family, you know, has the same issues because we can't process the foods. The non-native foods, like our ancestors could process the native foods. Well, the animals are the same. They had that diet of these native plants here for, you know, hundreds of thousands of years and such, and now they're being forced to eat all these non-native plants and stuff, and it's impacting it has an impact on them, and that's what we're trying to restore. That's a big reason why we're trying to restore our native plants. Plus, those plants represented our foods, our medicines. You know, we had over 100 different plants that we use for foods, and that doesn't count the berries or the nuts and stuff like that. Just the green plant foods, over 100 plant foods for foods.
So there's another question. Can wildlife be relocated if they decide to move too close to a residence or under a barn? Is there a way to relocate?
Is there a specific species you want to ask about? Because the general answer is no. However, there are exceptions to that. So in the depredation process, so for example, in the case of a mountain lion, it's a 3-strike policy, so we'll issue 3 depredation permits, and if that animal continues to violate that, we'll have a serious conversation. That may require me to relocate it. However, I don't love to do that. And especially with the mountain lion, after you know, like Fernando said, where that animal went into the trap and then got out of the trap, you never see that mountain lion again. And that's the same, you know, you trap it once, it's like fool me once, you're not gonna fool me twice. So it becomes, there are many long nights for me chasing these animals. But for other species, you know, like coyotes, for example, non-game animals, you know, no, we wouldn't put that amount of time and effort in. Bobcats, generally, also the answer is no. I think mountain lions are the ones that black bears and mountain lions regionally are the ones that sometimes will deal with that if they're causing conflict, if they're a public safety threat. I have done it with deer in very rare scenarios that I have, you know, there's usually a reason, like they're, you know, in Peter B's in downtown Monterey. So I go in and I wrestle them and take them out and put them somewhere else.
I think we'd all like to see a video of you wrestling a deer.
Oh, there's probably one out there somewhere.
So I think we have a sort of a follow-up question to that, which is there a way for residents to get a deterrent device that emits the swims?
Yeah, the gadfly that Fernando presented was one of the videos as well. That's available. I can contact me if you got my email address. I can send you a link to it. There's a number of sound deterrents. There's light deterrents. Any number of them. Yeah, maybe you want to.
No, what I would say as well is like if we can rotate those deterrent devices, I think is best, because sometimes the animal get to know the deterrent device and it's not working for them anymore. So we can get a couple of different ones, so that would be the best option to deter the animal.
A Bluetooth speaker and a good podcast will go a long ways too.
Can you recommend any podcasts?
That's putting me on the spot there. The Eras Tour.
So I don't know who would be best to answer this, but Highway 129 near Aromas also appears to be a hotspot mortality site. Could there be another wildlife crossing there in the future?
Certainly, I know that that was an important sort of stretch evaluated in that study that I was talking about, and like currently there's not any plans. I'll take this question as an opportunity to say that like I hinted at this planning process or this conservation and enhancement plan for this Gabilan linkage area that the Land Trust was facilitating, and that we have all these partners that we have brought together. And sort of goals of that plan, in addition to supporting like where we know where there's already support for a crossing, this Highway 101 spot that we talked about, Morgan and I talked about. Part of that plan that we're going to be developing and publishing as a regional conservation plan will be to identify priority other crossings, or like so like as funding is available, what would be the priority for the next kind of crossing, and certainly there are places along Highway 129, I think that could be. It'll also be identifying where are locations like either culverts or under crossings that can be maintained in such a way, or the landscape around them better maintained to facilitate movement. So there's a lot of like low-hanging fruit, I think, when it comes to crossing locations in our region, particularly along 129, where we could improve conditions either on either side of an existing culvert or under crossing. That could go a long way to facilitate movement.
Then we have another question for Chairman Lopez. How can we best support the Amundsen tribe in your efforts?
Well, thank you very much for that question. It really is appreciated. You know, if you go to our land trust and read through what we have there, and we encourage people to volunteer with us or to contact us. If you belong to an organization and would like to meet with us, we'd be happy to come on out. Send some representatives out to meet with you and talk to you. We do give a lot of talks on our history. We talk about our ethnobotany. We talk about our relationships with Mother Earth. We talk a lot about healing. We've had 14 years of bi-monthly healing meetings, and that right there is, we've learned a lot about healing, and that's what we'd like to talk to people about. You know, the people that are here, please understand, I say that, I always want to say this at meetings, is that, we had a horrific history, but we don't blame you. Some people I've heard that some people have guilt and stuff like that. We don't blame you, but the question you ask is a perfect question. What we do ask is to help us restore our culture, help us restore our indigenous knowledge, help us return to our lands so that we can fulfill our obligation to the Creator. That's what we ask. And so by working with, contacting our land trust, and then let's talk about ways to help and stuff. We are going to be going into the Pajaro Valley in the next number of years, probably in the 3 to 5 year period. We'll be having a really good presence in the Pajaro Valley. We anticipate having a nice greenhouse there, and just inviting people to come on in. In Santa Cruz, where we work at, we have over 150 people on our volunteer list now, working and helping us. And we hope to establish the same thing down in this area.
Don't give away that microphone. We have another question for Chairman Lopez.
You guys my hair?
With wildfire problems in their state recently, we've been reading a lot about returning to indigenous fire practices. Is that the Amundsen active in those kinds of efforts?
Yes. We've been studying fire again since 2006. And, we learned that lightning fires, like in a lot of that research is in the Santa Cruz Mountains. The lightning fires there occur about every 100 years. But when you get all the charcoal, when you look at the tree ring, when you date all the charcoal from a site, when you count the tree rings, and there's something else called phytoliths, when you do testing on that, you learn the frequencies every 3, 5, 7 years. And by doing that, you keep the fuel loads down low and stuff like that. And so whenever you have a fire at that frequency, it is a fire that has low intensity, it doesn't get real hot, it doesn't go through, it doesn't burn the trees, and it just creeps along the ground. It doesn't take off in a roaring blaze and stuff like that. And that's a practice that we're looking to return. We have people now learning to, studying to be bird bosses. And so that, and someday, you know, hopefully in the 5-7 years, our tribe will be running our own fires and stuff like that. And they'll be smaller acreage to start with, but they're going to be building for the future so that we can do larger landscapes then. So we do have a plan to return traditional fire practices back to our traditional territories. And we will want to work with the private landowners who want to work with us.
All right, so I know we're getting near our time, but I think we have time for another question. How many mountain lions are estimated to be in the Santa Cruz Mountains and Gabilan Range area? Are they at risk right now of the inbreeding that that you talked about?
I think if anybody gives you an exact number, they're lying to you. I don't know the Santa Cruz Mountains as well as I know the Gabilan. We don't have estimates in the Gabilan Mountains. I don't know if someone wants to stick their neck out and say what the Santa Cruz population is. Is Chris Wilmer too? Because he can tell you, but yeah, south of the 101, I don't know that we necessarily know how many mountain lions there are. I think one of the concerns for both the really for the southern populations is the Santa Lucias and potentially the Gabilans and subsequently the Clear Creek Management Diablo area could be source populations for some of those genetics down south. But, you know, enumerating wildlife is tough work. So I don't have an answer for that. Statewide recent estimates came out, 3,600 to 4,200, I believe, in that recent publication.
Yeah, the SDDFW is working in one population estimate that for the whole state is not out yet. Some numbers that we were managing for the southernmost part of the range is around 1.2, 1.3 individuals per 100 square kilometers. That's a pretty good estimate maybe for the rest of the state. So really low densities plus the risk of inbreeding already in place in this spot.
Well, as I said, we're getting close to our time, and I didn't get to all the questions. I apologize if we didn't. Somebody submitted a card and we didn't ask your question. But I want to give all of our speakers a chance to, like, if you've got any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with, don't go too long.
Well, just real quick, I'll encourage folks to go to the Land Trust of Santa Cruz County website to learn more about some of the things we're doing at Rocks Ranch. I'll say one of the things that excites me most about the work I do is the opportunity to work with all these different partners, also including the Almamusan Land Trust, and we work real collaboratively with them on all of our properties, including Rocks Ranch, and Chairman Lopez mentioned the work they're doing in Pajaro Valley. At the Watsonville Slough Farm is a really exciting new project for the land trust that's not that far away, that will soon be open to the public, where we're demonstrating sustainable agriculture next to wetlands and riparian restoration. But yeah, at the Land Trust website, you can learn a lot more about, again, this Gabilan Linkage Conservation Enhancement Plan project that I was referencing. But again, the most exciting thing is the way that we're working real collaboratively, including with organizations here in your backyard at San Benito Agricultural Land Trust and others. So yeah, thanks for the opportunity to come and talk about some of the stuff we're doing.
Bear with me, I'm going to tell you a story, but it's going to be brief. I got most of my carnivore experience in southern Africa, and I did a lot of work collaring and instrumenting rare and endangered carnivores in really remote locations. And the only way I was successful doing that was to really cruise the perimeter of every single protected area that I was working with, have a translator with me, and stop and talk to every single village. And I said, whatever language, have you heard of lion? Have you heard of hyena? And they say, oh yeah, it was over there 30 kilometers. And then I go to the next village and they say, oh, it was over there 20 kilometers. And I go to the next village, and after time, I get a spot on a map, and I'm very suspicious that there might be a lion, African lion or a hyena in this space. And the bottom line is, I would be nothing without those villagers who pay attention. And I think that people who have their eyes and their ears on the wildlife that inform management allow us to do research. So that story to be said, you guys are the eyes and the ears. You guys, there's a lot more power in collective action. So, if you see something and you want to talk about it, like I'm here and I can respond. And the only way we can make strides on this collectively is to have the public who's engaged and active.
Well, apart from thanking Foothills and all of you guys for coming out, so just more words of encouragement to contact CDFW, to contact UC Davis, in case you have more information about mountain lions in the area. We're trying to work to keep these species in the landscape, and I think without your support, this work will be so much harder. So, yeah.
What I'm going to say is that our relationship with the land, people look at land ownership and stuff like that. We're a land trust, but it's not for the purpose of owning land. It's for the purpose of getting land to steward it and take care of it in the traditional ways, to take care of our plant relatives, our wildlife relatives, the rivers, the creeks, the streams, etc. That's the main purpose of our land trust. We're learning now that we will, have some acquisitions of land, particularly cultural and sacred sites, to ensure they're not destroyed by development in future years. But currently, we have a lot of MOUs. We have cultural preservation site agreements with state parks. We have easements, etc. Currently, we have access to over 140,000 acres within our territory. And of course, we can't steward all of that, but we recognize the importance of partnerships and friendships. And one of our most important partners is the Land Trust in Santa Cruz County. We had our summer internship program just ended 2 weeks ago, but we brought down an archaeology field school from the University of Oregon. And we spent time out at Rocks Ranch. And while out at Rocks Ranch, we discovered a site that had been unrecorded, and it had over 80 bedrock mortars. And a bedrock mortar, as a rule of thumb, one bedrock mortar will feed a family of 4. And so there was 80 bedrock mortars in this particular site. And so there was a good population there that took care of it. And I'll end with one story that cracks us up. Is when they were doing survey work, they went near, they were walking in the area, in a field there, and they heard the mountain lion, and the professor leading that archaeology school from Oregon, he was kind of a shorter guy, so he just took off running, just that vision of him just running, and they heard a mountain lion. That was just hilarious, so I just wanted to end with that. Thank you.
Right on that note. Thank you to all of our speakers. It was wonderful to learn from all of you. Thanks to everybody here for being here. Grab some more snacks on your way out. And again, thank you so much. And we will send out information and follow up the end. So thanks very much.